I'd like to welcome everybody to the Burke County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023, held here in the chambers at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, we have in attendance Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Carswell, and Commissioner Britton, excuse me. We also have our county finance manager, our county attorney, and I'd like to welcome a special welcome to his first regular meeting, our new county manager, Mr. Brian Epley. So welcome aboard, my friend. Would you like to say a few words? I'll put you on the spot.
Just a pleasure to be here. I've been here now for 28 days, and what a privilege and honor it is to be onboarding with such a great team. So thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
That being said, I would remind everyone to please silence their mobile devices if you have those on you. And I would like to remind anybody that comes to the lectern to activate the microphone before speaking so they can be heard on YouTube. And I would ask the commissioners, we did have a request from an audience member when we are speaking, please move forward in your seat so we can be heard clearly and distinctly into our microphones. At this time, I would ask Ms. Tamika Garrison, she's the commissioned pastor of Quaker Methodist Presbyterian Church, to come forward and lead us in our invocation. And while remain standing, we'll have our county attorney lead us in our pledge of allegiance, excuse me.
Let us pray. Holy God, we come to you in this place with gratitude for freedom, with gratitude for this Lent season, providing us with this beautiful sunshine. We come to you with thanks for the folks that are willing to step up and be in the position to guide us through Burke County and all of the ways in which we make decisions for the best interest of its people. God, we ask you now during this Lent season to humble us in your spirit, to be together with us and to invite us to meet you in this space so that we may be guided by your spirit, so that each person that gets up and speaks, each person in this room and each person in this community and throughout the county are blessed by all of the ways in which we are felt led and called. Be with these individuals in our government, be with those in a position to make choices and decisions, guide their spirit, and be with them as they are empowered by their positions. Be with them as they hear the voices of those within the community, the electors that put them in this position to hear the spirit of what the community has to say. Also be with those that are speaking to be guided by the spirit of our elections, be guided by your spirit. Be with us now and always. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Gentlemen, that brings us to our next order of business, approval of the agenda. You've had a chance to review the agenda as amended. We did add an addition of resolution amending the Board of Commissioner meeting schedule for next month. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Burns, thank you. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. Next, we have approval of meeting minutes for June 21st, 2022, Board of Commissioner regular meeting. Gentlemen, you've had a chance to review those minutes. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move those minutes be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That motion carries 5-0, Madam Clerk. That brings us to presentations. We have several presentations to be presented tonight. The first one being Pet of the Month. We are always excited to see, presented by Caitlin Suttermeyer, our Animal Services Director. No puppy or cat tonight? Oh, there. It's hiding back there.
It is. So we appreciate you guys letting us come back to do our February Pet of the Month. We have, I think, Miss Emily as our dog pet of the month. This is actually Mikey. I will talk a little bit about Miss Emily. She is wonderful. She's a little bit older, really laid back, was a huge couch potato, very dog friendly. She got a little nervous whenever I told her we were coming in front of a big crowd, so she decided that she needed to stay back at the shelter. But we are open till 7 this evening if you guys would like to go down and meet her. She's absolutely wonderful. But she said it was okay if we took another dog, so we brought Mr. Mikey up this afternoon, who is absolutely wonderful, very well mannered, knows some tricks, as well as he is super dog friendly, has never met a dog that he has had a disagreement with that we have seen. Loves cats, will clean them, so if you have a diverse household, he may be the perfect match for you. Very energetic, would definitely benefit from an active family or a family with children that could run him and have a great time. But this guy is going to make somebody a fantastic pet. So we are having $20 adoptions this week because our shelter is absolutely packed out on dogs. We had a lot come in over the weekend, and we have a bunch more coming in this week. So I want to encourage anybody, if you are looking, come down, see what we have. I'm sure we have somebody who's going to be perfect for you and your family. We also love to keep our kitty cats in mind. So this is Jen. Isn't she beautiful? She's a medium-haired cat. She looks a little shy in this picture, but she is really outgoing. She's actually making biscuits right there on that bed. Anytime you see her, she's in her corner just making some sort of fantastic biscuit. So she is going to make somebody a wonderful cat as well. And we have many cats that are at Animal Services available for adoption. Believe it or not, we have a lot more dogs right now than cats, which is a little unusual. But if you are looking to add a kitty cat to your family, Jen would be perfect. So come down and see everyone we have. We did also want to show you guys a little promotion that we've been doing with our local law enforcement departments. It's called Cops and Slaughters. Has been a really big hit on social media if you guys have seen those. So our first group for February was Morganton Public Safety. So they came down, spent about 30 minutes with our dogs, and we took some really cute photos. I think it was a big stress relief for them, as well as our dogs getting them out. But they had a great time. It actually led to an adoption of one of those dogs. One of the officers took it home, so that was pretty exciting. We did the highway patrol this month, so hopefully we'll be able to show you guys some of those photos next month. And then we're looking at doing the sheriff's office and adding in a few other departments as well. So that's been a lot of fun to collaborate with them and promote adoptions as well as the good stuff that they are doing. As always, for any information on adopting or fostering, give us a call, stop in, shoot us an email if you have time. We do stay pretty busy down there, so email is probably one of the quickest way to get a response from us. So I would encourage, if you can, just stop in and see who we have.
Thank you, Caitlin. Gentlemen, questions, comments? Mikey's not camera shy, is he?
He is not shy.
Got a little hyper. Pretty dog. So, no questions or comments, gentlemen? If not, I would remind everybody to please adopt and foster, especially Mikey, Emily, or Jen. And how many do we have total in animal shelter now?
We have close to 40 dogs in the shelter. We just took in a recent hoarding case, so a lot of those are not available quite yet until we assess their health. And then we've got about 15 cats that are available for adoption.
So we got plenty of opportunities.
We got plenty to choose from, so please come down and see us.
Okay. Well, I would encourage everybody to please do so. So thank you for that. You're also up for presentation number 2, report on the animals seized in the animal cruelty case.
Yes, middle of January 18th through the 20th, following an animal cruelty investigation, we ended up seizing 49 miniature horses and 39 chickens from several different properties. From that, we did pull 23 counts of misdemeanor animal cruelty charges against a lady here in Morganton. And we do still have that one charge. We're working with the DA's office. That is still pending. Her first court appearance was on the 17th, and that was continued until March 2nd. And I'll touch on that, what we're going to go over at that March 2nd court date. So for the horses, we did utilize the Drexel Fairgrounds. We have that contract in place with them. So we did house 41 of the horses over there, but due to space limitations, we did have to move 8 horses over to another location for their care. And they were all assessed medically by Dr. Justin Jornigan with Foothills Large Animal Hospital. We did have to prioritize a lot of health needs. We did handle our most urgent medical cases to begin with, and then we went into diagnostics, diagnosing pregnancies. We do have 10 pregnant mares that are with us. Unfortunately, over the last week, we did have 2 of our pregnant mares miscarry their foals. So we did send one of those off for necropsy to make sure there's no disease taking place, making sure all of our bases are covered there. So hopefully we'll hear back from that test in the next few weeks to make sure we're not missing something. Everybody was vaccinated and moved out into foster homes beginning of February. So that was very exciting, and these horses are settling in really well. We do have foster homes in Burke, Caldwell, Catawba, McDowell, and Rutherford County. So kind of close by, but still out of view for off the road and stuff like that. These were heavily vetted. We did go out and do site visits, make sure they were off the road so nobody could really see them, and that the owners were going to be able to handle the care of miniature horses because they do require some unique care. They're a little different from standard sized horses. Moving on to our chickens, unfortunately, whenever we first brought the chickens in to us, we discovered that one of them was having some respiratory issues. So we pulled that one out to the side. Dr. Jornigan took a look at it, and we ended up sending some testing off on that. From there, the Department of Ag reached back out, and they wanted to do follow-up testing on the majority of the flock. When that happened, it came back positive for 2 reportable diseases, one of which was a pretty aggressive disease and they would not die an easy death. So with that, the state did recommend humane euthanasia of the chickens, and that was done on the 30th of January. We did work with our county attorney to file a petition in district court requesting that the owner of these animals deposit funds. The hearing is March 2nd, so that's what we're going to find out if she's going to be required to deposit those funds. I think the initial deposit was a little over $11,000, and then she'll be required to deposit $7,500 monthly if that goes through, and that is to help with the ongoing care of these horses. For the breakdown of that, we're estimating about $2,500 monthly in food, $600 for bedding that has been drastically reduced because these ponies are out on pasture now, so they're not requiring as much bedding. A farrier, we do have to have their hooves trimmed about every 6 weeks, especially now that they're getting better nutrition. Their hooves are growing a lot better. And then medical care, of course, we have ongoing medical care. Horses have to have their teeth filed, as well as we're expecting some baby ponies in the next few months, so those are all going to require ongoing medical care. We do want to thank all of our volunteers who came out and helped with these efforts. We absolutely could not have done it without our volunteers. They played an integral part. We were basically running 2 animal shelters at once with our normal shelter, and then we had these horses who, a little different scope there than what we're used to. So our volunteers stepped in, and we did estimate their value to be about $21,000 of care that they were providing for these horses in the about a month that they stayed with us. So they were there 3 times a day, medicating, feeding, watering, things like that. We also had the fire department come in and help us bring water to the barn. So that was a lot. It was a big group effort. We could not have done it without everybody involved helping us. And last but not least, we did our Animal Services Foundation, which is the nonprofit that is established to support ongoing efforts for our shelter. With the help of our Facebook posts, our media outlets, we were able to raise private donations to help care for these horses. That came in a little over $21,000. It was $21,667.20 that we were able to raise for the care of these horses. So every penny of that is going to go to the care of these horses. The foundation to date has paid out about $9,000, and the total $11,000 or almost $12,000 that was spent. And like I said, the remaining funds we will make sure will go to the horses' food, medical care until all the donations have been exhausted.
Great report. Gentlemen, questions, comments? Once again, just a fantastic job. I know it's been 24/7, as we talked about in pre-agenda, and that's a ton of work behind the scenes on weekends, doesn't matter what the weather is. You've been out there, and so is your staff, and so is the volunteers. So sincere appreciation from all of us, I have to say. So thank you.
Thanks.
Gentlemen, we've heard the presentation. We have a motion to accept the report as presented.
Move the report be accepted.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk.
Might put out some seating for people that
And Commissioner Britton just mentioned to me, anybody, there are, that's standing in the back, there are some seats in the first 2 rows if you'd like to be seated. For those that don't want to stand. It's kind of like church. Nobody wants to get on the front row. I see some brave souls up there, but okay. Then, gentlemen, that'll bring us to presentation number 3, Health Department presentation on progress of Burke County Recovery Court, presented by Shay Moore, our Health Education Supervisor. Shay, how are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you all are too. So, good evening, Commissioners. I am here to give a report on the current status of the Burke County Recovery Court program. In relation to this program, I am the grant manager. Next slide, please. So, why Recovery Court? So, the first Recovery Court opened its doors more than 30 years ago, and the ultimate goal was to allow individuals with histories of addiction and crime to cycle through the justice system at great expense to the public, to use the leverage of the court to keep them engaged long enough for treatment to become successful. For those who are unfamiliar with our Recovery Court program, this program is made possible through a Bureau of Justice implementation grant that was applied for in early 2018 and was awarded $500,000 later that same year for a period of 4 years. The program officially kicked off in May 2019 and has continued ever since, with court sessions being held every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. So who do we serve? Recovery Court serves high-risk, high-need adult nonviolent offenders with a felony or misdemeanor drug conviction. Other felony or misdemeanors are accepted only if alcohol or drugs played in a contributing factor. There are no violent or drug trafficking charges that are accepted. The individual must be on active probation. They must be identified as having a substance use disorder. And it's also important that they're willing to commit to treatment, community support, and to work the program for at least 1 to 2 years. Okay, next slide, please. So, as to be expected, the COVID-19 pandemic brought about a lot of unexpected changes to the course of our program. At the beginning of the pandemic, when stay-at-home orders were given, court sessions were unable to take place and support groups were unable to meet, and many of the participants found themselves falling out of compliance with the program. With such a hard blow being dealt to the program in the infancy of its beginning, the team began to question whether we were going to meet our grant goal of serving at least 80 participants over the course of the grant, and whether other program goals would be achieved. However, once the orders were lifted and the vaccines were made available, things began smoothing out and progress was able to be made. So this is the Burke County Recovery Court team. It consists of a judge, support from the district attorney, probation officers, a recovery court coordinator, a treatment provider, a defense attorney, a mental health liaison, peer support specialist, and a laboratory technician that assists with urine analysis. Next slide, please. Okay, so the benefits of the program to participants. It's really focused on person-centered treatment, providing counseling and peer support services. We also assist them with finding resources within the community, so housing, employment, education, childcare, health, transportation, really hitting on those social determinants of health. Accountability is really important through this program. That's something that a lot of the participants will tell you that that's never really something that they've had to work through, self-accountability. Motivation is also provided to them through incentives. So this could be through earning certificates of achievement. They could have reduced probation fees, or they could be entered in for various drawings to help keep their motivation up. We do also help provide financial assistance for medication-assisted treatment. Next slide, please. So while many challenges have been faced over the last 4 years, the mission of our program has remained the same: to provide the offenders who enter the program access to all the available community resources, to assist them with moving into long-term recovery, reducing recidivism rates, and also reducing the burden on the judicial system and the residents of Burke County. So as current stats on recovery courts and the benefits they bring to the community, recovery courts reduce recidivism rates up to 58%, and each year recovery courts serve approximately 150,000 people nationally. And we have exceeded our enrollment. We have enrolled 83 different participants over the last 4 years, exceeding our grant goal. And according to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, on average, every person that is in recovery court saves their community approximately $6,000. So therefore, Burke County Recovery Court has saved our community an average of $498,000. And here you can see, throughout the presentation, you could see some of the photos of participants that are in our program currently, or they are graduates of the program. Next slide. Okay. So while year 4 of our grant ended in December of 2022, we have received a grant extension to help move help the program to spend down the remaining funds, and to also help those that are currently enrolled in the program to move through the different phases. This extension will remain in place until the 30th of August of this year. There are plans in place right now where we're working on an enhancement grant for recovery court. And if received, or I should say when received, this grant would start October 1st of this year. Currently, there are 16 participants enrolled in recovery court. And as of December 2022, 11 participants have successfully completed all the requirements and have graduated the program. There are 6 more participants that are currently projected to graduate by the end of 2023. So once we receive any news about potential grant funding, extending the recovery court program, I'll be back to give you all an update. Thank you.
Once again, great report. Gentlemen, questions, comments?
I just want to say that the presentation we saw in the pre-agenda still tugs at my heartstrings, and
No, I'm sorry I couldn't bring my friends back with me
very
today.
great. I'm very grateful for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Jay, thank you. Well, gentlemen, do we have a motion to accept the report as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the report as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. And it's 5-0, Madam Clerk. Next presentation number 4, Tourism Development Authority Financial Update for the period ending December 31st, 2022, presented by our friend Ed Phillips. Ed, how are you?
Good evening. How's everyone tonight? Appreciate being here for my quarterly and sometimes annually update. Before I get started, I did want to let everyone know about our Discover Burke Trails Day event at Comma coming up on March the 11th. It's from noon until 5. You know, I'm tempted to turn around and face the crowd. There's more of them than there are you. It's hard not to do. But anyway, March 11th at Comma from 12 to 5. It's going to be hosted by Deborah Holt Noel from PBS North Carolina Weekend Show that a lot of us watch. And Burke County's been featured on there quite a bit. Also, Jennifer Farr Davis, she's known as the Trailblazer. She holds the world record on the fastest through hike of the Appalachian Trail, and she's a TED Talk speaker. And she's going to be there to motivate everyone to get outside. We also have author Randy Johnson. He's written several books, one called Grandfather Mountain, A Guide to an Appalachian Icon. And he's going to talk about his work. We also have Earl Hunter Jr. from Brevard. And Earl has a program called Black Folks Camp 2. And he's encouraging minorities to get out and camp. And he's going to be there as a speaker as well. So we're excited about that. Also let you know that Burke County has been selected one of two places in North Carolina to host foreign journalists. So we have 4 foreign journalists coming here April 22nd through the 24th from 4 different countries. And they selected Burke County and Charlotte to showcase the best of Western North Carolina here. And so we're really excited to host those folks. As far as the financial report, this is through the end of the year, December 31st. And you have the report there in front of you on the screen. We had occupancy tax revenue of $366,382. As I mentioned in pre-agenda, these are always 2 months behind the way the reporting goes and the way it comes into the tax office and then it's reported to us. Since that time period, we actually have collected $509,000 in the first 6 months of the year, the fiscal year starting in July. That's a new record for us. Hotels are busy, attractions are busy. We've had a good first 6 months and things still look good for the next 6 months through the end of June. We also had our balance sheet as of December 31st, $826,615.82. There are some liabilities in there for the city of Morganton and the town of Valdez that receive a portion of occupancy tax. And so we're in a really good financial position. You also had in your packet the audit that was completed just recently. The audit financial report is provided to our auditor by the county finance officer, Margaret Pierce, who is also the finance officer for the Tourism Development Authority. So she provides all these numbers to the auditor, and then the auditor comes back and checks on that to make sure everything is going well. And we had a great report from our auditor. And so tourism is alive and well in Burke County, and we're excited for the near future.
Ed, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments? Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Gentlemen, do we have the motion to accept the report as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. That'll bring us to item number 5, reevaluation update. This will be presented by our new county manager, Mr. Brian Epley. And I know there's probably not many questions on this, so.
Yeah, well said. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we've had incredibly in-depth discussions over this topic over the last few weeks, including pre-agenda. And I have some very precise goals and objectives tonight. Not to necessarily delve into the data, but this concept of revaluation that is upon us in Burke County, something that's impacting every household, every taxpayer in our community. I wanted to provide some insight on exactly what it is. What is revaluation? Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it now? How are we doing it? And if I'm a taxpayer, what can I expect in the coming weeks and months as this board and this organization and all the other taxing authorities, municipalities, and so forth in our community work through their budgeting process. So the first thing that I would say is revaluation is simply a process of bringing property, and real property only, I'll talk about that more in just a moment, up to market value. And I'll also define what market value is. But essentially, we're adjusting tax values for land structures. That's what quantifies real property, homes, buildings, land, not the things that are inside of those. But bringing it from tax value to market value. And obviously, we know over time the market changes. It's driven by costs such as labor costs, material costs, those type of things. In North Carolina, real property is only adjusted during this reappraisal, this revaluation process. In North Carolina, statutorily, we followed the ad valorem taxing methodology, which literally means according to value. And so we have to adjust properties to do that. And it has to happen at least every 8 years. But the North Carolina Department of Revenue, who is the regulatory agency who oversees this process, recommends that happens more frequently. So most counties in North Carolina advance that to meet that need. In Burke County, the last reappraisal was done in 2019. There is a 4-year cycle. So we were on the calendar for 2023 to be a reappraisal year. But I'll talk about in just a moment. There's other analytics and predictive statistics to help really require that advanced schedule. Here I've just put a table of our entire tax portfolio. It's really made up of 4 components. As I mentioned earlier, we're really only talking about the real portion. So even though Burke County has about a $7.5 billion tax base, that's inclusive of real property, which again, land, buildings, structures, at about $5.8 billion. Personal, which would be things that we own. So the most simple way to define personal property is if you take the structure and turn it upside down and shake it, anything that falls out would be personal property. Obviously, motor vehicles and state boards. State boards would be things that the county doesn't value. So railroads or telecommunication infrastructure, those type of things. You can see real property makes up the vast majority of our tax base. And what I'd point out here is 3 of the 4 components, functionalities of our tax base, are perpetually and fluidly updated on an annual basis. So again, real property is what we're talking about now. As I mentioned, it's highly regulated as to what we're, the process of going through reval at least every 8 years, or if you see at the bottom of the slide here, when what's called our sales ratio is more than 15% below or 15% above market. And so the sales ratio is a very a fairly simple predictive analytic. Every real estate sale that happens in Burke County that goes through MLS, that goes to the Register of Deeds office, is put into a pool, and there's random samples done by the North Carolina Department of Revenue in which they evaluate property transactions. And so, for example, if there's a piece of land or a home that sells for $100,000, the Department of Revenue would compare that sales price to the value that Burke County has on the tax books. And if that price is higher than the tax value, that would inflate that sales ratio. If it's lower, then it would have the inverse relationship. So again, it's a very statistical, mathematical comparison of what are our tax values compared to what did that property sell for. Obviously, the best way to gauge market is a sales transaction, and that's what we use. And so you can see here the sales ratio for Burke County all the way back to 2014. In periods of reval, look for example at 2019, we got our sales ratio really close to 100% at 99.27%. And so we're trying through this process of revaluation to adjust our tax values to market value, and market being, again, what a willing buyer and seller would exchange the property at. And as you can see in 2019, getting to 99.27%. Since that point, we've seen, really the economy's heating up. We've seen labor cost and material cost and supply and demand really put create a significant gap in what homes and land are selling for. So I think generally most people have observed the market. Property is selling at a higher value now than it was 4 years ago, but yet the tax values have remained constant, and that's what's created that separation that you can see here. So this 100% would kind of be market value, and as the price of these transactions increases, that gap is the difference. And this is just an optic to demonstrate what we're trying to accomplish here is equilibrium. That's not unique. This decline, this gap in the sales ratio isn't unique to Burke. So here I've modeled against several of our regional peers, and you can see that the concept is the same. There's just been an uptick in sales transactions with property tax values remaining constant. So this is kind of where we have landed with a very unbalanced comparison between the two, between market and tax. So again, as property values change fluid, it's just not practical to try to update those tax values. That's why the Department of Revenue encourages us to do this as frequent as we can, but the undertaking, we have 60,000 tax parcels in Burke County, and the quantity of doing this concept of mass reappraisal on a fluid perpetual basis is just unrealistic. And so we try to capture it on January the 1st, so literally at midnight on January the 1st of each revaluation year is when we try to capture the value and adjust the tax value at that time. I mentioned this earlier, but there is a very precise definition of what defines market, and essentially it's the price estimated in terms of money at which a willing buyer and a willing seller would exchange property. So it's an arm's length transaction. I think it's important to point out that excludes things like short sales or sales between family or foreclosure, which aren't a good measurement of what market is. So market values are established by an appraisal. Most people are familiar with, there's two types of appraisals. Most people are more familiar with fee appraisal. Fee appraisal is where it's a very granular, very detailed review where if you're going to sell your home or if you're going to buy a home, you may ask for an appraiser to come and compare it to other comparable properties. Most people are familiar with that process. What we do as part of a reval, again, considering we have 60,000 parcels that we have to evaluate, is we design neighborhoods. So we move throughout the county, grouping similar based on geography, based on house type, based on a variety of variable factors. We group similar properties together and do these neighborhood mass appraisals based on a schedule of value. So back in November, this board adopted, as required as part of the process for revaluation, what's called a schedule of values. And that is a very analytical, quantitative tool in which, for example, we define the square footage for a single family residence at $115 a square foot, and we're able to apply that to these neighborhoods that really, again, is a very, it's very structured in how we arrive at the value. So if you have a 1,500 square foot house, the base value in Burke County as part of the 23 reappraisal is 1,500 square feet times $115 a square foot. And then that value can go up or down based on location, based on other comparable sales, based on amenities in the house, based on if it has a basement, other specifics to that distinct property. I would point out that even at $115 a square foot, if you look at transactions across the county, I think that is still a very conservative approach. It'd be very difficult to build a home for $115 per square foot, or certainly buy one. So even at that, we were very, and I applaud the board and the tax administration office for ensuring that we weren't overvaluing during this mass appraisal process. That's difficult to see, but what we're trying to demonstrate here is the increasing cost of, for example, a single family dwelling. If you look in the far left here, the last time we had a reappraisal in 2019, you can see, for example, a home with a value of $150,000. By January 1, 2020, the value was $164,000. By January 1, 2021, $184,000, and that's continued to escalate to the point where it's well over $200,000. And in that period of inflated market value, again, the county's property tax has remained flat. That's the gap that is trying to be corrected. Here's just another way of seeing that heating up the market. And you can see also diminishing number of days on the market. So this inventory was moving very quickly. I also think it's important to point out, now that we've talked about what is reval, why are we doing it now? I think it's clearly to right size the separation, the gap between tax value and market. We're doing it because we're more than 35–40% on average, and depending on what part of the county you're talking about, away from market. So that adjustment is going to be required statutorily by the Department of Revenue. But I think it's also important to point out that one's tax levy is the component, the product of two variables in an equation. Everything that we've talked about during revaluation is only talking about the value. So the most common question that people ask during reval, does this mean my taxes are going up? And I think that question is simply premature at this point. We're talking about capturing value, adjusting that to market, and that's, again, a highly regulated, statutorily driven process that's really happening all across North Carolina. And as we work through the budget process between now and July 1st, the board will hear needs of the organization and be required to adopt a tax rate. And until both of those are solidified, one's tax levy, it's simply premature to conclude. If at this point, most of our property owners should have received what's called a notice of value from the tax office. So that means that they would receive the county's opinion of value following our mass reappraisal process that we've been conducting really over the last 2 years. If a property owner agrees with the value, simply there's nothing that they need to do. However, if they disagree with the value, you can see at the bottom here, it's really important that they complete on the back of that notice of value, there's an informal appeal process. An informal appeal is an opportunity for a property owner to meet with one of our appraisers and to go through the mechanics and the scientific approach to how that value was calculated, to make sure that we have accurate data in our tax books, to make maybe that the property owner has comparables that insinuate that the value is either higher or lower. And so we'll take really the time on a one-on-one basis to work through that and make sure that the most important thing to our staff is that the data is accurate and that it's correctly captured. It's also important to point out that we're asking that this informal appeal process be capitalized on within a 30-day window of receiving that notice. To this point, so notices have gone out last week, began to be received this week. We've had 64 informal appeals. Department of Revenue would tell us to expect 10%. 10% of 60,000 is 6,000, so we're still a long way from that. After working through the informal appeal process, if we still have not received or we still have not concluded or got to a satisfactory place, there is a formal appeal to the Board of Equalization and Review, which is a board appointed by this county commission, to hear both sides' fact patterns and make a determination on the value moving forward. Again, as we move forward through the budget process, the board will hear more statistical data about values and organizational needs, and we'll be able to advance the conversation about reval. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to at least explain what is revaluation, why are we doing it now, how are we doing it, and how a taxpayer may work through any disagreement that they see with our opinion of value. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager. Gentlemen, well, I know we've all looked at this material before, but do you have any additional questions for Brian at this point? Just one question. So for me, is the appellate process the same for commercial and residential?
Well, there is an additional step. There is a property tax commission on the commercial side that it offers a higher level of appeal. John's here, he could speak more to that, but in theory, the concept is the same as going through the Board of Equalization and Review. Anything you'd add, John?
John, do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A commercial property owner wants to appeal, they can do the informal appeal through the tax office just like any private residents can.
Microphone up a little bit.
If a commercial property owner wants to appeal, they can do an informal appeal through the tax office just like a private residence may. And then they can go through the Board of E&R. If they don't reach satisfaction there, then they can appeal to the Property Tax Commission in Raleigh and ultimately up to the Supreme Court. And private residents can do the same.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, any other questions, comments? Timely presentation. Thank you very much, sir. Gentlemen, we've heard the presentation. Do we have a motion to accept the report as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the report as
Thank you.
presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. Well, gentlemen, item number 7 on here is scheduled public hearings, and we have none, so that'll move us into item number 8, informal public comments. Madam Clerk, I know we have several folks here to speak tonight, and I would just remind everyone that when you come to the front, make sure the red light indicator is on so you can be heard. And I would also remind you to be very cognizant of the 3-minute rule, because we do have quite a few folks here to speak tonight. So, Madam Clerk, who do we begin with?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have Ms. Cecilia Surratt.
Good evening, Chair Mulvey, Commissioners. I'm here tonight to commend Ms. Shay Moore, our County Health Education Supervisor, for a thorough report on the health assessment of Burke County. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I did not attend the County Commissioners meeting in question. However, after numerous phone calls about the meeting, I found it necessary to gain access to the meeting. By watching the meeting several times online, both the report of Ms. Shay Moore's and Commissioner Smith's rebuttal, I found Commissioner Phil Smith's definition of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, very disturbing. This deliberate attempt to misrepresent the assessment and its findings and somehow connect the report to communism is designed to stoke fear. This is a well-known technique used from a very old playbook, and its aim is to destroy the credibility and any chance of this program's success. To aid underrepresented, underserved population of this county of an opportunity to get the help it needs. At no time did Commissioner Smith allude to the report's finding. There were 3 major categories in Mrs. Moore's report that are concerning: homelessness, opioid addiction, and obesity. All 3 categories have the potential to cause premature death. One could interpret that the Commissioner Smith's rebuttal means that he doesn't care about the report or its findings. Whichever way, his response was negative. I would suggest residents to keep a close eye on the outcome of this report. I feel it necessary at this time to enlighten Commissioner Smith and listeners of the true definition and purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is something I do on a state level. With Order 14, Governor Cooper. Diversity refers to people's race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, nationality, social economic status, language, disability, ability, religious commitment, or political perspective. That defines diversity. Equity promotes justice, impartiality, fairness within the procedure, process, and distribution of resources by county commissioners, governors, or institutions. Inclusion serves people of all diverse backgrounds are welcome to have a seat at the table. This involves giving all residents the power to weigh in on important decisions and participate in developmental opportunities. I'm going to leave you with a saying, which is said to be by Edmund Burke. There is some dispute. The only thing that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Madam Clerk?
Wallace Moncrief.
There you go.
Chairman Mulvey, County Commissioners. My name is Bert Moncrief. My address is 1722 Robin Hood Drive. I'm a member of the NAACP. Although I was born in Claxton, Georgia, and my parents as well, Burke County has been my home since 1975, and I'm not leaving it. I like it here. For most of my entire career, I've worked in the county as a physician assistant. I'm here to ask you to form some type of formal venue whereby the people or you, our representatives, can discuss the Confederate statue. William Faulkner was right when he said the past is not dead, it's not even the past. I feel that people are trapped by our upbringing, by our whiteness, by our political ties, our churches and communities. We can't seem to leave these groups. Working problems out has just gotten bogged down. Southern white boys like myself can't change the fact that our parents and ourselves were awash in the lost cause narrative, the glory of the Confederacy and the oppression of Jim Crow. But now I believe that most of us have learned better. It's time to do better. What we memorialize is important. Where we put our most heartfelt statements on public display says who we are. For me, there's no getting around that a Confederate soldier, the highest object on the courthouse square, still says that white people are in charge. If you're black, don't count on necessarily getting a fair shake from the justice system. Let's explore what we can do. Let's take a step. The risk might be not too much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Alan Fullwood.
I'm Alan Fullwood. I reside here in Morganton, and I've been practically a lifelong resident of Burke County. Let me preface my remarks with the fact that I can speak to several decades of my experience in this community, and I've witnessed occasions when this county and the city have been confronted with many social problems that needed to be addressed, and many obstacles that needed to be hurdled, and bridges that needed to be built. And on every occasion, they came to the task. And I'm proud to be a citizen of this community. But Mr. Chairperson, your fellow commissioners, I thank you for this moment with you. 2 years have passed since I appeared at this same podium. I expressed my desire that the Confederate monument and statue be removed from the public grounds of the historic Burke County Courthouse in Midtown Morganton. That same evening, you heard voices of individuals who advocated for the monument and statue to remain on public property. I ask, what voices were heard? You and I know that the monument could be removed. There are avenues in which we could take, and I think we qualify for possibly 2 of those criteria that the monument could be removed from the public ground. Removal has occurred in other communities in the state and locales across the country. You have veiled your decision-making behind the existing state statute. Those that erected that monument and statue veiled behind white supremacy. Over the past 2 years, I've heard many descriptions given to this effort to have the monument and statue removed from the public ground. I'm old enough to remember in the early 60s, during the sit-ins and on the marches, similar responses to the efforts to bring equality to African Americans and others in this country. Pardon the following personal reference. As a 27-year-old African American, my introduction to public service was when I was sworn in as a member of the Morganton City Board of Education. That was on the heels of desegregation, of public education within the city of Morganton and the county of Burke. Pardon me.
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up at this point.
Okay,
It's been
fine.
more than 3 minutes. I said it's been more than 3 minutes.
Oh, I have? Well,
Yeah, sorry.
well, I'll certainly give this to your
Please do.
secretary. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Kevin Frederick.
I know it takes time to investigate the owner's deplorable treatment of their animals, but why can't the worst of the horses be taken sooner?
Can you please state your name?
Pardon? Oh, Pam Pickert, 309 East Concord Street.
I'm sorry, you're
Pam Pickert, 309 East Concord Street.
Pam Pickard? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and I wondered how often a vet went to check on those horses during that year and a half. And how many times a farrier came to give his thoughts on how bad the horses were. And why couldn't pictures be taken of the hoofs and the teeth when the farrier came, and then after he trimmed the feet, the hoofs, and floated the teeth, so that people could see the difference, and you wouldn't have to wait a year and a half for those poor minis to keep going down. Most of their body weight was, 1, 2, 3 out of 10. They were dying, there were skeletons in the fields. How long does it take to investigate? I can't understand that, and nobody has any answers. Pictures will show a lot more than words. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard.
Mr. Kevin Frederick.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's a privilege to be here to speak.
Yep, microphone, please, sir. Oh, there you go.
Great, thank you. It's a privilege to be here with you this evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I am part of a retired Presbyterian minister and currently the Religious Affairs Coordinator for the NAACP, and we have been building a coalition with other groups in our community that have a common cause. The common cause is to advance equity and inclusion within our community and to promote it in a spirit of reconciliation and peace. And so our efforts are Christian in nature from the point of view that we feel called as churches from Morganton Area Ministerial Association, Valdez Ministerial Association, Burke Ministerial Alliance, as well as the NAACP and the Burke Equity Group. And we represent literally thousands of people. And so we are developing ways to have conversations. We've invited you to be part of that conversation. March 9th we'll have a Symbols of the South Symposium, which was started 3 years ago and cut short by COVID. And so we are continuing that with Dr. Cameron Lippard, who will be speaking to us about how people interpret symbols and differently within the same society. We'll follow that up with a community forum in which we will have different voices from the community, including from the NAACP to the Sons of the Confederacy. We've been invited, or we have invited them as well. And we would like to have a dialogue so that we listen to each other effectively, that we learn to hear each other effectively, and that we move forward as a unified community. So that is our purpose. Those events will be held at First Presbyterian Church, March 9th and 23rd. You are invited to be there and participate. And we will be, that'll be at 7 p.m. and the 9th and the 23rd at First Presbyterian. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Reverend Wesley Hendricks.
Commissioner Mulvey and the members of this board. I'm Pastor Wesley Hendricks, and I do live here in Burke County. I have continuously thought about what I would say on tonight, and as I reflect on the countless number of people that have presented themselves to this board, I must say that our sentiments are all of one accord. I must confess that there isn't much more that I can say that has not already been said. But I can, however, place a verbal addendum to supplement all that has been said. I learned at an early age from my mother that there is a distinct difference between hearing and listening. Merriam-Webster defines hearing as the process, function, or power of perceiving sound, specifically the special sense which noises and tones are received as stimuli. Listening, on the other hand, means to pay attention to sound, to hear something with thoughtful attention, and to give thoughtful consideration. Now, in all that has been said during the course of the last couple of years, I am certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that you have heard our sound. But I am not convinced that you have listened to our words. The monument represents pain for many individuals. While it may not represent your pain, we simply ask that you take and make it your purpose to show empathy to this pain. We understand that you hear us, but the question is, are you listening? You hear the sound from our lips, but you're listening, but you are not listening to our hearts, and you're not listening from your heart. So as I stand before this panel of well-respected, intellectual, and well-rounded individuals, I ask that you not only listen, I ask that you not only hear our words, but please, in all due respect, listen to our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Mr. Isaac Crouch.
Good evening, commissioners, county employees, members of the public. My name is Isaac Crouch. I am currently serving as the chair of the Burke County Board of Health. I'd like to start by quickly going over the general structure of the board and how it works. I'm sure y'all are all familiar, but just in case anyone else is not. First off, the board is made up of citizen volunteers such as myself who are appointed by the county commissioners. We are responsible for oversight and support of the Burke County Health Department, and one of our most important roles is hiring the county health director who carries out the day-by-day duties of the department. Currently, this position is held by Danny Scalise, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. This type of structure isn't common for most county department head positions, which are generally hired by the county manager. Welcome, by the way. With all the recent discussion about the department's work, I believe it's important just to point all that out and make sure everyone's aware. So the health department's mission and its vision is to promote and protect the health and environment of the citizens of Burke County, and to be viewed as the primary resource of individual, community, and environmental health needs. Similar to many places in our country, we are fortunate that the citizens of Burke County represent a wealth of diversity of culture, race, ethnicity, age, sexuality, gender, languages, nationalities, religions, those who don't practice any religion, And I believe there was a couple more mentioned by one of the previous speakers that I missed out on. But the point is there's a lot of different folks out there. Regular diversity, equity, and inclusion training helps to ensure that the department's resources and the services it provides are accessible to everyone within these spectrums. So when it comes to issues like this and others, the board believes that dialogue between different points of view is always necessary and important, and further that productive discussion can only really happen when all parties involved show respect for one another and base their comments in fact and data as much as possible. So with that said, as the chair and on behalf of the entire board, I would like to affirm our commitment to all of our employees at the department and say that we are extremely proud of their efforts to improve the lives and the health of the diverse people and communities throughout all of Burke County. And we will continue to support this crucial work, some of which you heard from Shay Moore earlier, and you hear a lot from her. So lastly, I'd like to invite all the commissioners to visit the department and meet all of our employees and learn more about what we do. And thank you for all your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch.
Jeff Toner.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Toner. I live at 106 South King Street here in Morganton. I'd like to talk to you about the valuation. I heard the new county manager, welcome, go over his slide deck. But some of the increases on the commercial side are just amazingly high. One of our facilities, 52.4% increase, the other one 59.7% increase. That's from 2009 to 2023. That's just an incredible amount of increase. Even the homes, I think you said they're valuing at $115 a square foot, but that's not what my statement states for my home. I just think that, Burke County's always been business friendly, and I do think that this is going a step backwards on the commercial side. Forget the residential, people can talk to that. I'll talk about the commercial side. I just think it's a way of running businesses out of here, not bringing them in. And I think you really need to take a second look at the increases. People expect little increases along the way, for sure. But to go from 2019, 4 years later, to almost a 60% increase, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I also know that it seems to be this slide deck is 7 months, 6, 7 months behind where the commercial property, where it is now, where it was. And, with a lot of things happening out in the economy, interest rate increases, recession looming, it just seems like this type of increase is very premature. So I just implore you to look at it and reevaluate and look at the big picture. And, I'm sure this will bring a lot of additional revenue to the county. So maybe look at what, y'all want increases, people are always begging you for money and so on. But look at it and see what's real and what's going to really help this community. And I'll just touch on the private property, it's going to hurt a lot of people. So I implore you to take a peek at this and look at it and make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toner.
Mr. Ron Michaud.
Good evening, everybody, commissioners. I had family to come home a few weeks ago, and they was coming from east part of the county to the west. They noticed a rebel flag, and they were thinking about moving back home, which would be good for me to have them here. And they were very upset about the flag. I said, well, everybody's doing something to get the county to remove it and the statue. I said, right now, that's all I can tell you. But I do appreciate the county giving the employees a raise. And how you doing, Brian? But there's another issue that I'm concerned about that I've talked to some retired deputies. Say that's the Burke County map. So right here at the G, put yourself up in the corner and you live right at the line of Jonas Ridge. We have 7 to 5 deputies working a shift.
Speak louder, please. Get closer to the mic.
We have 7 to 5 deputies working a shift. If that gentleman has to leave the G to get up there, it's 20, 30 minutes, and somebody's breaking in your house, what are you gonna do? I don't know about the grants or the budgets, but I would like to see at least 5 deputies in the eastern part of the county, and maybe 5 in central, and 5 in the west, which would be, I know it'd be costly, but if you put it in the grant, they're gonna either give it to you or they ain't. So you might as well go ahead and ask for it. So, and it would be safe for the officers to have quick response and backup. With the crime rate today, it's unacceptable, but that's what it is. So we have to come up with a plan to help these guys. And the government is throwing money overseas. You might as well give it to us, people here that need it. And that's my expression, and I'll be back again. Have a good night.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any other?
That's all I'm aware of, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Your name? What is your name?
Minister Alicia Conley.
I thought I called you. I'm sorry. I've got you on the list. Yes, Miss Alicia Conley.
Good afternoon to Chairman Moley, to Vice Chairman Carswell, and to the Board of Commissioners. This afternoon, I would like to present a resolution in support for protecting the residents in Burke County. Whereas the Burke County branch of the NAACP seeks a resolution and action to address the Confederate Soldier Monument located on the grounds of the old Burke County Courthouse. And whereas on June 27, 2020, a racially motivated incident occurred at the Confederate Monument that continues to present a life or death threat to public safety, with the statue that was surrounded by citizens armed on that day to protect the statue. And whereas these racial tensions have caused particular pain to Black residents, posing as a reminder of white privilege to all persons of color, and communicating a distortion of history that many citizens of race find offensive. And whereas the monument stands illegally because the North Carolina State Constitution prohibits government action that denies equal protection and racial discrimination. Therefore, be it resolved that the North Carolina State Conference of the NAACP condemns the failure by the Burke County law enforcement agencies to enforce the law and protect residents. Be it finally resolved that the North Carolina State Conference of the NAACP asserts that residents and citizens should feel safe in their communities. And be it finally resolved that the North Carolina State Conference of the NAACP reaffirms its support of the Burke County branch of the NAACP and its efforts to remove the Confederate Soldier Monument. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. No others?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I'll close the public comment meeting, section at this point. So I will move on to item number 9, consent agenda. This will be presented our county manager.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have 11 items for consideration, all following your pre-agenda meeting. Item 1 is the Burke County Public Schools financial data for the period ending December 31st, 2022. We have a couple of appointments from the clerk. Item 2 to the Council of Aging, and item 3 includes a removal and an appointment to the Burke County Planning Board. Item 4, also a reappointment to the Western Piedmont Transportation Authority. Item 5 is a resolution to support the closure of Kimball Glass Drive from Community Development. Item 6 from General Services, this is a lease extension for the Jonas Ridge Convenience Site while Phase 1 begins on that project. Item 7 is from the Finance Department, request for consideration or approval of our fiscal year 22-23 audit contract. Item 8 is from our Fire Marshal's Office, and this is request for approval of written agreement between Home Trust Bank and Oak Hill Fire and Rescue for some apparatus financing. Item 9 is from our Tax Department, the collection report for January 2023. Item 10, also from the Tax Department, this is your release and refund report for January 2023. And finally, for consideration, item 11, which is financial data for the period ending December 31, 2022 from Western Piedmont Community College. Those items, again, were presented at your pre-agenda meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager. Gentlemen, you've heard our county manager, so do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. That'll bring us to item number 10, items for decision, acceptance or rejection of offer to purchase surplus property, and this will be presented by our county attorney, Mr. J.R. Simpson. J.R., how are you this evening?
Been better, but have been worse. Always good to be bringing something before you, this board. As you all are aware, the county owns certain properties that are not required or advantageous to the county's functions. Usually these properties have been acquired by foreclosures at which no one bids at foreclosure sale. We have a property that we own that Tim Norman of T.L. Norman Land Company has made an offer. It's property that bears the reed number 11244. It's a 0.86 acre vacant lot off of Morgan Drive. The property is landlocked, and it adjoins other property of Mr. Norman's. He has offered the county $3,000 for this lot. Under county protocol, the county may accept, reject, or counteroffer. The minimum value set by the county in 2010 was $3,750. If the county chooses to accept the offer, then once I have the offeror's money in hand, I place a legal ad in the News Herald telling what the county is doing and giving the public an opportunity to make an upset bid for a period of 10 days from the date the legal ad first appeared. If there is no upset, then 10 days later, it would become his property. If the offer is upset, then we re-advertise and start all over again. Our tax administrator, John Bridgers, thinks it's in the county's best interest to accept this offer. That is my opinion as well. We've had no offer on this property in the last 17 years. And by this, we could make the property productive and tax-paying once again. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Gentlemen, questions, comments? There being none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept a bid in the amount of $3,000 from Tim Norman for surplus real property, parcel number 11244, and direct the county attorney to initiate a 10-day upset bid process.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. That is 5-0. Motion carried, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. That'll bring us to item number 2, resolution amending the 2023 meeting schedule. This be presented by our clerk, Ms. Kay Drong.
Good evening, gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to adopt a resolution amending the board's 2023 annual meeting schedule. The board would like to change it from March 21st to Monday, March 20th, and the following resolution in your packet does that.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions, comments, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-05.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Motion carried, 5-0.
Thank you.
That'll bring us, gentlemen, to reports and comments. 2022 summary of accomplishments presented by Ellen Glines, our Deputy County Manager and Planning Director. Ellen, how are you this evening?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Good to see you, Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the Commission, and members of the public. It's hard to capture in a year what all the many things that we do in Burke County from Burke County government, but we try to do it once a year through our list of accomplishments. So I'm happy to share that with you. Excuse me, I'm having a little allergy thing this evening, but hopefully we'll get through this. Burke Development provided this note that Molded Fiberglass of Morganton invested $7.2 million and 30 new full-time jobs at their facility, and that included a $200,000 building reuse grant that came through the commission here. Gersheimer of Morganton also provided a $60 million investment, noting 78 new full-time jobs utilizing a $500,000 building reuse grant. And also in other projects, 238 new jobs were noted and announced, and 77 million in investment from across the county in the last year. BDI also approved their 22-23 action plan. You see the Burke Development site. We had a nice groundbreaking in January just outside of this report. Animal Services, they noted that 1,333 animals were adopted into loving homes or returned to their original homes in the past year. And this is 71 animal adoptions and returns greater than last year. Animal Enforcement investigated 1,328 citizen complaints. And Billy Bob, the Mastiff in that photo, he came as a stray to Animal Services. His Facebook post went viral, grabbing national and international attention. If you haven't seen anything about Billy Bob, you need to check it out. It's really great. And he was featured in People Magazine, Southern Living, Huffington Post, UK Yahoo News, and the Drew Barrymore Show. He's happily living on a farm in McDowell County now with his forever family. Community Development. We wanted to note that we had over 300 single-family home permits last year, and that was an increase of over the prior year of 221 permits. So we're seeing growth. We're happy to see that. That was a 37% increase in single-family homes. Also, interestingly, we had 16 duplexes last year. We don't really see many of those typically, so we're glad to see that. Manufactured housing was about the same. Commercial remodel permits were slightly trending upwards. And then the residential single trade permits, it's always a large number, 1,276 last year. Those are all for renovations and improvements in homes. It might be heating, it might be additions, and we're glad to see that number always strong in Burke County. We also updated the Blueprint Burke Strategic Land Use Plan and the future land use map that we use here very often. And we also finalized and recorded a 0.8 mile length of easements for the Fauna Flora Trail along Benfield's Landing, and that was with the help and support of the late James Family Campground. Excuse me. North Carolina Cooperative Extension responded to 34,000 citizen calls, emails, and visits with educational information and resources. Volunteers gave over 2,000 hours of community service valued at approximately $64,000 to the benefit of Burke County. And they offered almost 1,400 Burke County youth a variety of developmental opportunities, including STEM, agriculture, community service, citizenship, leadership, and life skills. The communications team, 911, they implemented a social media presence for public relations and sharing of important announcements via Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They also created an employee engagement team to support all personnel, increasing feedback and improving morale. They answered over 43,000 911 calls in 2022. They also answered about 130,000 administrative calls for service. The Emergency Medical Services staff received the American Heart Association's Mission Lifeline EMS Gold Plus Achievement Award for its commitment to offering rapid, research-based care to people experiencing the most severe form of heart attack, ultimately saving lives. They also partnered with Western Piedmont Community College to create the EMS Academy for students with no prior experience or certifications, and they will gain that certification from EMT to paramedic while being employed with Burke County, so it's an investment in youth. The first class began in January of 2023, and another class is upcoming in August, so we're proud of that. They also added a lot of new equipment to all the ambulances in Burke County. The Fire Marshal Emergency Management folks, they completed 811 fire safety inspections and fire plan reviews. They also completed 160 fire investigations or illegal burns across the county. They responded to 65 search and rescue or hazardous material incidents across Burke County, and the Fire Marshal and Emergency Management staff completed 378 hours of training and continuing ed. In General Services decorated several county buildings with green lights, and this was for the Operation Green Light event. It was an initiative to show support for military veterans in Burke County, so that was enjoyed in last November. They also completed the renovation of the Board of Commissioner room that we're experiencing tonight. They replaced the roof on 3 large county buildings, including Human Resources Center, Agricultural Center, and the Water and Sewer Office in Hildebrand. They repaired and replaced 23 fire hydrants in Burke County and completed a design and bid for the Jonas Ridge Waste and Recycling Center. Burke County Health Department, the Public Health Director, Danny Scalise, was a co-recipient of the Ron Levine Public Health Award, which is a national award and brought recognition to the Health Department in Burke County. Burke County Health Department hosted their first Family Fall Festival, which is an outreach event. Some photos included there at the bottom. And the Health Department received the Diversity Champion Award by Select 2000. Human Resources, they created 10 one-hour virtual training modules. This is for staff and supervisors within Burke County, and it's with covering such topics as maintaining anti-harassment, anti-discrimination environment, collaborative leadership, conflict resolution, writing and delivering disciplinary and corrective actions, diversity, equity, and inclusion of training, employment law overview, and many others. They also created and implemented the Code of Conduct process and rolled it out to 911 staff, tax, EMS, health, and animal services. They filled an unprecedented number of job openings over the year and processed the highest percentage of retirement calculations in Burke County's history. Burke County Public Library became a fine-free library as of July 1st, 2022. It's an initiative to relax or just eliminate any fines for books, so it increases readership. They secured over $50,000 in grants in 2022. The library's Bumble Tree Service Project provided over 100 bags of sundries and snacks to local care facilities, and the Burke County Public Library held over 1,450 programs for the community, with over 30,000 people participating. The Parks and Recreation Department completed several projects on the Fauna Flora Trail. They installed a bike repair station at the trailhead where the Iron Tree is. They finished installing stone at the main parking lot and installed several new benches. The athletics division, they had a successful spring, summer baseball and softball league with 52 teams. They had 121 indoor soccer teams, 29 fall football teams, 40 outdoor soccer teams, and 158 basketball teams this winter. Register of Deeds. Stephanie Norman was elected by the North Carolina Association of Register of Deeds to serve as their historian for fiscal year 22-23. This puts her on track to serve as the association's state president in fiscal year 28-29. 3 staff were certified by the North Carolina Association of Register of Deeds. I think that was recognized here in the chamber at one of our meetings. And the Burke County Register of Deeds office was selected and approved for one of the North Carolina Register of Deeds preservation grants. Phase 1 involved the deacidification and preservation of historic marriage licenses for years 1866 to 1873. So if you're a historian or researcher, come check out the deacidified and preserved historical marriage licenses. That's a hard word to say. Veteran Services partnered with the Burke County Killed in Action Memorial Committee to present an outdoor Memorial Day service and dedication of a KIA monument on the grounds of the historic Burke County Courthouse. They hosted a Veterans Mini Stand-Down event and resource fair at the Burke County Senior Center on October 14th. Clothing, employment opportunities, healthcare programs, and various veteran-related services were provided. They also provided a Veterans Day service and meal to local veterans and their families. This program was in partnership with the Kama Performing Arts Center in Morganton. Senior Services. Age My Way was the theme of May's Older American Month. In celebration, both Burke Senior Center in Morganton and East Burke Senior Center in Hildebrand provided a drive-through event with 400 free t-shirts and boxed lunches for local seniors. They also held multiple fairs, COVID-19 flu vaccine clinics, and Medicare open enrollment events that were provided at both senior centers. The Meals on Wheels program utilized over 200 volunteers, and 2 volunteers were selected for the Governor's Award for Volunteer Service, and a 3rd volunteer was presented with the Governor's Medallion Award for her volunteer service with Burke County Senior Services. We're proud of that. The Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office worked in conjunction with the North Carolina Alcohol Enforcement and its nuisance abatement program to deal with 25 problem residences across Burke County. The Burke County Sheriff's Office seized over 56 pounds of methamphetamine through aggressive patrol and working collaboratively with other agencies during investigations. The recruiting team worked various community events, festivals, and high school homecoming games, trick-or-treat events, etc. Social Services Department. The Christmas Wishes 2022 was a success with the community, DSS staff, and county employees providing over 200 Christmas presents for children experiencing foster care. As of November, 102 children experiencing foster care have achieved permanency, which is a permanent family placement. Child Care has 445 active cases with no waiting list. And DSS started a leadership program for staff development. The Soil and Water Department, the Soil and Water Conservation District presented conservation education programs to all elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, and educated students on conservation and natural resources. The Conservation District was allocated $427,900 for conservation measures on rural and urban land. And this example here, the Patton High School wetland project was completed in 2022, and there's before and after photos. And last but not least, the Board of Commissioners. Burke County officially opened the upgraded Catawba River Watermill boat access on Thursday, October 20th. This project was done in conjunction with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. Burke County and the city of Hickory celebrated the completion of a new 12,000 square foot airplane hangar at the Hickory Regional Airport. Both entities partnered to construct the new hangar, which can hold up to 4 large aircraft. To meet the growing demand and enhance the airport's ability to attract tax base and generate revenue. See more to come there in the coming years at the airport. Commissioner Johnny Carswell received the Attorney General's Dogwood Award for his work with the National Opioid Settlement and helping to ensure that the $750 million from the settlement gets to the people and communities who need it the most. The Attorney General's Dogwood Award is awarded to North Carolinians who make their communities safer, stronger, and healthier. And with that, that's the conclusion of this presentation. Thank you.
Alan, great presentation. Gentlemen, questions, comments? Gentlemen, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the 2022 Summary of Accomplishments as presented by Mr. Glines.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Madam Clerk, that passes 5-0. This moves us to reports and comments, and we will start with our Finance Officer, Mrs. Pierce.
Thank you. Happy to see the sunshine today and just report that we are trucking along in budget season and excited to be doing budget. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the last meeting of commissioners on January 17th, I've been preparing a petition for deposit of funds for animals under NCGS Section 19A-70 and a notice of hearing set for March 2nd in the Sherrill matter. This matter may be heard on March 2nd, or it may be moved to March 6th, which will still be in the 15-day period. I attended the working group meeting of the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education on January 18th. I attended the winter conference of county attorneys in Chapel Hill on the 26th and 27th of January. Reviewed the proposed changes to the short-term rental section of the Burke County zoning ordinance prepared by Community Development. I have reviewed the National Opioid Settlement materials and documents concerning the second wave of defendants that include Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, and have reviewed the supplemental agreement for additional funds. I have been working with the proposed buyer concerning the Morgan Drive property and working with Kay regarding the agenda item for that you folks just accepted tonight. I prepared for and attended a meeting held by the county manager concerning the NCPTS between the NCACC and county officials. And I have reviewed public records requests made of the Burke County Board of Elections and have corresponded with the executive director concerning the same. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
No comments tonight. Thank you.
Mr. County Manager.
I follow Kay's lead. Just happy to be here and lots to do. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Smith.
No, sir.
Commissioner Burns.
Just a couple things, Mr. Chairman. I want to say thank you to the chairman and the board for the committee assignments that I have been given. I've had an opportunity now to attend all of those committees, at least once, I think one of them twice already. For those of you listening, I just want to let you know what I'm doing in case you have an issue or want to reach out. I'm on the EMS Quality Review Committee. I serve on the executive board for the Western Piedmont Council of Governments, and I'm a member of the board of directors for the Foothills Regional Airport. Also, many of us braved the cold and wind this past Friday to attend the groundbreaking ceremony at the new Jonas Ridge Convenience Site. That was pretty cool. And Chairman Carswell and I had an opportunity this past week to attend the speech contest for the Soil and Water folks, and I'm telling you, anytime you can go listen to kids speak, I mean, even on a subject like water, it was amazing. But I really appreciate the opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Britt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to share just a couple numbers. I serve on the DSS board for this board, and I think sometimes we kind of forget about the magnitude of work going on in our DSS. And just to give you a couple numbers, month of January we had some 13,609 recipients of services in Burke County's DSS. In the food and nutrition services, that brought in $3.7 million into Burke County. I think sometimes we forget about the magnitude of those numbers. Not only is it helping our citizens, but a $3.7 million influx of dollars into our county every month. Of course, they do a multitude of work with family and children's services, and but the energy program, another program that we have hundreds of families who are able to take advantage of those programs as well, and hundreds of thousands of dollars come into our county every heating and cooling season to help our citizens. And again, that represents dollars that come to help our folks and into our county. I could go on a long time with data, but I'll just stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Carswell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent a number of days in Raleigh in the last month walking the halls of the General Assembly to pay attention to the bills that will affect everybody here in Burke County. Some of those being Medicaid expansion, which passed the House just recently and will now move on to the Senate, which Jeff knows will have a tremendous effect on DSS here in Burke County if expansion is passed in both houses. Medical marijuana, which Senate Bill number 3 is sitting in Senate right now, is a pretty controversial bill. There are a number of bills regarding the schools that are in the General Assembly at this time. I also attended 3 different meetings on broadband, trying to get broadband to Burke County. I'm still working on trying to get broadband to Burke County after 8 years. It is probably the most aggravating, upsetting task that I've ever been on in my life. Trying to sit down there with Charter Spectrum and talk to one of the richest companies in the United States of America and tell them we need broadband in Burke County and can't get it. So after the last meeting that I've had, I've asked the chairman to instruct the county manager to set up another meeting with Charter Spectrum here in Burke County. Did place them on their toes in the last meeting, and I may have got a little too vocal, but I think that's what y'all wanted me to do, so I did. So we're trying to set up a meeting. So Charter Spectrum in kind of Burke County, there's absolutely no reason that we don't have broadband in Burke County, none. If you can dig a ditch, you can lay a line. If you can string up a pole, you can lay a line on a pole. His company's offered up poles and Charter Spectrum turned them down. So we need to force this issue, and that's been our job. As JR said, we had a little issue with our tax system here from NCPTS through the County Commissioners Association. We set up a meeting on that, and we'll be reporting back as to what we find on that. As far as the opioid settlements, the second round or second tranche of the money is going to be coming in to Burke County. We received around $17 million on the first run, somewhere close to it, and we probably be receiving another $13 million on the second run. We're still on track with Corey Fisher-Wellman and Danny Scalise and our new county manager leading the charge for our attempt to build a rehab center here in Burke County, which is sorely needed. We'll make it a regional facility. We are on track. If you've heard that we're not on track, that is not true. We are on track. This is a slow, methodical process to build a rehab center. You got to do it, and you got to do it right. We can't waste one red cent. We got to make every penny count, and we've got to go back to the General Assembly to ask for more money. There's one other thing I did, but I'll let Scott handle that one. So that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Carswell, and I'll just echo his comments on broadband. I know the new commissioners are finding this out as well, that Jeff and Johnny and I, we've been beating our head against that wall for quite a while. And, you know, you ask nicely, but after a while, you stop asking so nicely. So we send Johnny in for that. That's our secret weapon.
Go in for the kill.
That's exactly right. So
I shouldn't have said kill. We go in for whatever it is. We try hard.
we try hard. So thank you, Commissioner Carswell. And Commissioner Carswell and I did attend an advanced leadership course in Chapel Hill for 6 days and earlier this month. And so I told my wife when I came out, she was hoping fervently I'd be a Tar Heel fan. No way. So Wolfpack in East Carolina all the way. But we had a pretty intense session down there. It was about 60 hours instruction in 6 days. So very beneficial. So that being said, I did want to mention also, Randy mentioned the ribbon cutting up in up the mountain. It was Jonas Ridge. It was rather cold that day. You're taking your chances when it's in February and you're doing a ribbon cutting. So I really want to give a shout out to Madam Clerk for organizing that with General Services as well, Mark and your team and all the other folks that worked on that, because Emergency Services gave us a emergency tent to use, and the wind was howling, snow was blowing, and in the middle of the afternoon, I think the wind chill was in the 20s. Our new county manager has been down in Cleveland County, did not realize how cold it gets in western Burke County, and so he got a little cold up there, but I think he learned his lesson. So anyway, that being said, a couple of courtesy reminders. March 2nd, Board of Commissioners special budget meeting. The meeting begins at 12:30 p.m. at the Lake James State Park Visitor Center. We also have March 3rd, Board of Commissioners special budget meeting. The meeting begins at 10 a.m. at the Lake James State Park Visitor Center. We also have the Board of Commissioners March pre-agenda meeting, which will be held on March 7th at 3 p.m. We also have the Board of Commissioners March regular meeting will now be held on Monday, March 20th at 6 p.m. And I would remind everyone, you've heard us preach this for many, many, many years. Please don't litter, pick up trash. We still getting constant complaints about that on our roads. And so we're doing all we can to try to come up with a program to rectify that. It's not been easy, but every time we get it cleaned up 24 hours later, it's just a never-ending process. So we are making a real effort to address that. So please pick up trash, cover your loads to the landfill or the convenience sites, because that is where a lot of the trash does accumulate. I would remind everyone, as you saw from Animal Services, how many dogs and cats that we do have in custody right now. That number usually dwindles throughout the year, but now this 12 months a year we stay at capacity. Well, actually we stay at beyond capacity. So please spay or neuter your pets. And that being said, I will move it to item number 12, vacancy announcements. Madam Clerk, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. We have the following opportunities for citizens to be engaged in county boards and committees. We have the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, the City of Morganton Planning Board and Planning Board and Board of Adjustment for the ETJ area, Burke Senior Center Advisory Council, Child Protection and Child Fatality Prevention Team, East Burke Senior Center Advisory Board, Council on Aging, Burke County Board of Health, Partners Consumer and Family Committee Advisory Committee for representing the Traumatic Brain Injury Seat, and the Hickory Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So those folks in the audience or listening on YouTube, there are plenty of opportunities to contribute and volunteer for boards and committees, so we'd love to have you apply. At this point, gentlemen, there is no need for closed session, so we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Britton. All those in favor signify with an uplifted hand. 5-0, Madam Clerk.